kind of want to move on to the third question. And we also hinted at this a bit earlier, but what is the future of the, audiovisual essay, or call it whatever you want to call it at this point? And not only within, film studies and academia, but also in the general public sphere. So we were talking about YouTube, we were talking about kind of integrating kind of YouTube aesthetics, or, what about even TikTok aesthetics into an audiovisual essay? So yeah, what do you think the future is, like in academia, in film studies, etc.?
What a question. I mean, I think that, and there's a ton of great stuff on this in the latest issue of the Cinephiles, which I think you'll definitely include a link to below.
Yeah.
Thinking about the form as it exists now, where it's going, I think we're there, right? Like, I think that's not to say there isn't work needs to be done, but I think that it is now integrated in film scholarship. It is, I think it is, there's some resistance to it. Obviously, it might depend on your country, where you are, your institutions. For example, I think in Europe, there's a lot more openness to it in Europe and in the UK in particular, where I studied, than in a lot of places here in the United States. But I think we're there, in the sense that I think the momentum is just going to keep going forward, or at least that's my hope. And I think that's also in part because there are people like you and me and Sydney Wild Harris and, and others who are now going into academia, having taken undergraduate courses, being really enthusiastic in this work. And so we are just going to keep advocating for it. And I think one thing I really admire about Mattel and Keithley in their Scholarship and Sound and Image workshop is that rooted in that is they want to train scholars, yes, to make their own videographic work, but to also be able to go back to their own institution and teach it to students. That's an essential component.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. As far as what tools we're coming to see, I mean, I think, and I'm not invading your answer when I say this, I think it's everything. Like, I think any digital tool is now fair game. And I think that's where we're seeing the most exciting innovation in videographic criticism. For example, in the pandemic, I didn't get to go to a lot of movies in 2020, like pretty much everyone else, but the highlight of my year movie going was seeing Zia Anger's My First Film, which was, I don't think it was made as a video essay, but it was, a live performance desktop documentary that was, it was originally going to be a live performance. I had tickets to see it in London. Then I had to leave because of quarantine, come back to the United States. And then, Zia Anger started doing live performances via streaming platforms. And so we're seeing the integration of YouTube Live and Twitch. Kevin B. Lee, I know, is very interested in Twitch going forward. So that's another, the live performance video essay is so exciting, and not something I would have even thought of, 2 years ago, or when I first got introduced to the form. So we're seeing that. So I think there's this, it's funny. I was talking about this with John Gibbs, and I actually think that it's very likely that in 5 to 10 years, the video essays that you and I are making are going to look antiquated, because I think the development of the form is, runs parallel to the development of digital technologies. And I think there's an incredible openness to incorporate all of them. And to some extent, this is the phrase that I quote every time I do any kind of interview, and that's Catherine Grant, and this phrase, working in the flow, that videographic critics are on social media, we're sharing our work, getting feedback, editing, revision. And I think the videographic critic to some extent needs to be part of that flow. And part of that being in that flow is an openness and a willingness to try new technologies when you're able to have access to them and when they're available. So I think the future of the audiovisual essay is endless. And I think that there's a lot of work to do as far as continuing to develop the form and what it is. But I think we're there. And I think what's really exciting for us is that I think we're still able to get kind of in on the ground floor, in a way, and thinking about what the future of this form is. So, I don't know. What do you make of it? I know.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, as you were saying, it's in the process of becoming. We are essentially, just starting the journey. Essentially, it's the beginning of the end of the textual realm, to some extent, of course. I don't want to put the textual realm. I don't want to put it in a garbage can or whatever. But I think we shouldn't be, hesitant to kind of experiment with new technologies within an academic setting anyway. And, if we do become, if we do our PhDs later, et cetera, that would be a great opportunity to actually, kind of experiment with new technologies and research with these new technologies in conjunction to VC and videographic criticism. I have been recently kind of researching about virtual reality and augmented reality and how it could kind of be used within, this environment. And not only with regards to kind of creating an audiovisual essay not only with regards to watching an audiovisual essay in virtual reality, but also kind of how can scholars use VR to create an audiovisual essay, because Premiere Pro has they have that functionality where you could use their editing software in VR, and you essentially use these remote controls as that, and that adds kind of that tactile layer. So just imagine kind of walking through an Alfred Hitchcock film in VR and editing like as you watch the scene, or you really get up close and you actually somewhat really touch the film to some extent, and you could also manipulate that, etc. But I'm just kind of speaking out loud, but I think that would be kind of interesting to see where VR could lead us to, and not only in terms of film studies, but also in general, like how it could help the humanities and also film studies in terms of more pedagogical approach, where what are the pedagogical advantages of virtual reality in general when students actually experience an audiovisual essay in VR as opposed to I don't know, 2D playing on your screen, right?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I also think, how we, Kevin Bealey, when we were curating the Black Lives Matter video essay playlist, I think offered a really great definition of just how we think about videographic criticism more generally. It's using media to think about media.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so virtual reality, I mean, what could be better than like literally stepping inside the media object to think about it?
Yeah.
And I also think, to your point, like, I think we're also seeing, I'm interested also in there was a great Twitter thread started by Ian Garwood, who's always, everyone should follow Ian on Twitter. He's a great videographic critic in his own right, but is always kind of asking a lot of questions and getting a lot of call and response to the community on Twitter. And he was talking about video essays that look good on the big screen. Now, whether that means like in a projection setting or on a TV, and I think this is really interesting as well, especially as we see more and more video essays being screened on the film festival circuit, or in a classroom environment, or maybe even, being included, as, even Netflix now is starting to get kind of more into the video essay game and what that would look like on a 4K television in your living room. And so I think that also is going to inherently change how we think about the technology that we're using, in that, I think always a majority of video essays will probably be watched on the computer or whatever, or the iPad or whatever form it takes. But in thinking about the exhibition of video essays is very interesting. And as the form grows, I think that's something that we're going to need to start thinking a lot more about. And when we think about audience specifically.
Yeah. The thing is, like, so you're talking about like having, you could have an audiovisual essay, since it's digital, you could have that accompanied with a film. And that's what festivals are doing. That's what the IFFR did this year, and they've been doing for a couple of years. Before you watch a film, you could watch the audiovisual essay, and that's what Mubi does as well.
Right.
And yeah, as you said, that really changes, the audience's interaction with not only the audiovisual essay, but also more importantly with the film, because you have this, you have the critic telling you what the film will be about, what they think about the film, sometimes right before you watch the film. And obviously that will definitely alter the meaning making processes of the audience. So that's also a question to ask, right? Like, where do you place the audiovisual essay within that kind of structured space? And but yeah, I think, I've also been thinking about, creating some sort of, streaming service of audiovisual essays. I mean, I don't know how much use that would come to, but I think that would also be interesting, just to, like, since we're talking about like these new technologies like SVOD, et cetera. But then again, if it's on YouTube, if it's on Vimeo, it's already on some sort of streaming service. But I guess the categorization should be there. But
yeah, and I'm interested in something like that too. And we've kind of already starting to see BBC's Inside Cinema is a video essay series that is included as, I mean, I don't live in the UK, so I'm
Yeah.
not, my terminology might not be correct here, but that is included within the BBC packages that people
Right.
subscribe to and purchase. So we're starting to see that, and the and also, you have something like Bordwell and Thompson's observations on film art
Yeah.
that are in the, included on the Criterion channel and are included on Criterion box sets. Um, are the, are those, we don't need to get into that, but those videos, I think, sit on this borderline between videographic criticism or video essays and like mini documentaries about film. And so I think this is very, this is a very interesting topic that I definitely want to think about more, and going to get into it now. But as we gear it to a real general audience, beyond the general audience that we're talking about on YouTube,
Yeah.
who is engaged in video essays but who has a baseline familiarity with videographic criticism, how do we make sure that video essay doesn't then drift into the more documentary realm
Yeah.
as that happens? I'm not entirely sure, but I think those are two examples of how those are two templates or ways to think about how videographic criticism uh, could play to a general audience.
Yeah, I definitely don't have the answers either. I mean,
Yeah.
it's as you said, we probably have to create, keep those categorizations that we have and try to, fight for them as much as we can to some extent. But yeah, it is easily, at the end of the day, the audiovisual essay, it can be, it is a product of many various subgenres. So, I mean, you could argue that it started as the essay film, and then which the audiovisual essay somewhat borrows a lot off of. But that's that we could discuss that another time. Um, so yeah, I think yeah. Do you have any ideas of kind of like also how we could institutionalize the audiovisual essay within academia a bit more?
Mm. One goal that, and this latest issue of the Cinephiles is a great example.
Yeah.
Um, if I could talk about the podcast for a second and how I was thinking about the podcast, I love and you often encounter these in libraries, but books that are collections of interviews with filmmakers.
Yeah.
There are series. I can't think of it now. I'm citing it as my podcast inspiration, and now I'm blanking on the name. There's a great collection, series of interviews in multiple volumes of interviews with avant-garde filmmakers, for example, or the books by University of Mississippi Press on interviews with a single filmmaker are really great. And thinking about the podcast, why I wanted to do a podcast and why I thought it could contribute to the broader discourse was, I think that we should be talking to videographic critics and interviewing them about their work in the same way that other scholars have interviewed filmmakers, whether they are, Martin Scorsese or, avant-garde filmmakers.
Yeah.
I think that along with advocating for the form itself, there needs to be these supplementary aspects to videographic criticism. One would be, it doesn't need to be my podcast, but some type of ongoing conversation. And this had been happening at academic conferences and places like the Middlebury Sound and Image Workshop and other written forms. So I don't want to say that I'm some pioneer in that regard, but in trying to talk about videographic criticism, I think is a way to advance the form
Yeah.
within the academy. So I have aspirations to one day, have these interviews transcribed. Maybe we could get them on a website. And I've obviously cut down these interviews. Like we have extended transcriptions.
Yeah.
And so then that way these interviews could be cited in other scholarly works
Right.
more easily. And I've been very honored that sometimes audio from the podcast has made its way into videographic works. Again, Ian Garwood's, one of Ian Garwood's works has done that. So that's very cool for me. The second is, I'm very interested in writing about audiovisual criticism. Now this might be like counterintuitive because on the one hand, the liberating thing about audiovisual criticism is that we don't need written words. And so then like taking a form and reverting it back to the medium that we're trying to free moving image criticism from seems kind of counterintuitive.
Right.
So maybe it doesn't need to be writing, but I think that critical engagement with videographic criticism is necessary in that we have other critics and scholars interpreting other works. Now we see that in one form in transition in the open peer review process and in the supplementary statements that are published with people's works. But I think that, and this has been done by others, so I'm not saying that this is not out there, but why shouldn't we write about the work of Catherine Grant in the same way we write about the work of Alfred Hitchcock?
Right.
I think we should do that, or making a video essay on the work of Catherine Grant or Kevin B. Lee. And these things exist again, but I'm saying more of that I would like to see. So I have aspirations to someday, and my newsletter is a part of this, and having a blog feature, but having some sort of publication that is writing about video essays and or video essays about video essayists.
Right.
With the latest issue of the Cinephiles being like a great example. And maybe we don't need a standalone publication. Maybe special issues of journals like the Cinephiles and whatever is enough.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of trying to encourage that more. I had Alan O'Leary wrote a great guest piece on a video essay by Matt Payne that I published in the newsletter, that I think is exactly the kind of work that I'm thinking about. And so I think that's one way to advance it within the academy, and also really recognizing that Catherine Grant to me is just as much an artist and filmmaker as she is a researcher and scholar.
Yeah. So,
and I think a lot of people would feel that way. I'm not like, it's not, I don't think that's a hot take, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, people could let us know in the comments, what they think about that. But yeah, generally speaking, I think it's a great idea, using the tools of, academia, which are, written word, which is, very, I mean, it's just something, in society itself, the written word is just a sacred form of media. It's like a sacred medium, because it has a lot of advantages over others. But generally speaking, you're using those tools, writing about, videographic criticism and with the written word, and then, putting that out there in order for, other people within other academics in other fields, or also the academics who are a bit hesitant to start, working with videographic criticism in film studies. They could also probably, read that and probably be convinced. But I also want to mention that some academics, a lot of academics might be hesitant to actually, learn about editing in general, and, we as digital natives, a lot of kids are picking up editing. Editing has also become much easier right now, primarily because of the, user-friendly infrastructure that we have. But also, Adobe also released a program like iMovie, where, you have these free editing softwares you could use. They're not very complicated. You can't do a lot with them, but still you could do probably, simple commentaries, etc. So yeah, as I was saying, some academics might feel a bit, hesitant to use these digital tools. And that's why, for example, the workshop at Middlebury is great. And also the work we did at the University of Groningen, because, well, we're mostly teaching students, but but still, it's great because they could pick up these tools and, pick up that, academic background that they come from and kind of integrate them together. And that's how it all started with us anyway, in the first place. So yeah, I think I did a couple of videos about kind of the work we do at University of Groningen and what we teach students. So there was one about deformative criticism, and there was also one about how we could represent concepts and ideas in an audiovisual essay. And at the end, I drew a tutorial on Final Cut Pro. They're also applicable on Premiere Pro, but so you could, people could easily watch that and try to figure out their own way of integrating that specific technique within their own audiovisual essay. So I'll link those as well. But yeah, I was also just thinking about kind of what other tools we could use. I was thinking about, artificial intelligence. I don't know what your ideas about. They're probably a bit too far-fetched, but I don't know if you have any ideas about that.
I have not thought about it, I'll be honest with you, but I'm all for it. Like
Okay.
I think my answer my answer is that any technology is fair game.
Yeah.
And it's not, I guess what I would say is it's not like I want to see what people come up with, you know? And so I think I think why not?
Yeah, I mean, there was at the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam, I think it was in 2019 or probably, or in 2020, I think. No, sorry, it was in 2019. They had I forget the project's name, but I could link it down below. These guys essentially like programmed an AI to create. They fed a bunch of like scenes they shot, and the AI essentially edited a movie out of these scenes, and you could essentially go there and it was an interactive exhibit, but you could essentially go there and kind of change how you wanted your movie to be. So you could essentially, if you wanted like kind of snappier editing, if you wanted the average shot length to be like 5 seconds, you could change that, and the AI would like edit that and output some sort of movie. But yeah, I was just thinking about that technology, and that what just imagine an audiovisual essay created by an AI. What would that look like? They're getting
Right.
smarter, and if they could probably, actually, and that would work well for deformative criticism.
Yes. Yeah.
Very well, because an AI could actually measure specific aspects of a shot better than we can, for example, like colors, etc. And that they can actually maybe analyze that in conjunction to what you're saying and provide that best balance of voiceover plus shot. But yeah, whoever's really good at programming, please do one. That would be great.
Yeah, and I'm sure there is work out there that is making use of all sorts of digital technologies that we don't even know of. I mean,
Yeah.
I know Kevin Ferguson has done work on, like, he has these film visualizations that are, I'm not even gonna try to describe it, but go look
Yeah,
up
I think I've
Kevin
seen that one.
Ferguson's
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's
With
like, it's the
Frankenstein.
stacking of
Or
the film on like each color
oh yeah,
of,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's like a visualization, it's like a color visualization map where you can see essentially I think like every frame of the film like stacked on top of one another, and
Yeah.
it's using this this technology that you would not associate with film criticism, but
Yeah, I mean,
is
this
very
is
cool
like,
work.
yeah, this is more of the deformative criticism that we were talking about.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, we could talk about its academic value of that in another video, but let me know if you think that has any academic value in the comments. So just to kind of, sum up, so what kind of tips and advice would you give for kind of new practitioners? Also practical tips and conceptual tips.
Yeah, I think for me, don't focus too much on your video being incredibly polished. I can't emphasize this enough, and this is something that I've said, like if I talk to like a class of students or something. The video essay community generally, I think, is very open to a wide, like, if you're a superb video editor, that's
Yeah.
great, and we'll appreciate that and we'll comment on it. But if you're not, I think when you're watching it, you can kind of tell, okay, like, I'm not a great, I don't consider myself a great video editor at all. And when you do that, you start to say, okay, I'm going to focus here on the argument that it's making. And I actually think that that's where some of the best work is actually when someone isn't super familiar with an editing program, because you kind of feel that in the piece. And when I watch that, I feel, wow, here's someone who is so passionate about whatever their media object is or whatever they want to say about it, that they are going to these lengths to get this video out into the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a very important one, is to just go, to just do it. The other really cool thing is that there are these incredible online communities that you can pretty much Google any editing question that you have and find an answer within seconds. Like, that is, it's very easy to be self-taught as long as you have a baseline level of knowledge and access to these platforms, which unfortunately a lot of them are. I mean, there are some freer versions, like, Adobe Premiere can be very expensive, but you could use iMovie or whatever's at your disposal. And so I think that would be my number one tip, would be to not, if you were to focus more on teaching yourself how to be an insanely polished editor, or really focus on developing a videographic argument, to focus on the second one is far more important, I think, as you're beginning. Yeah, I don't know, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with I think, what the field appreciates a lot is, putting those kind of taught academic, film critical, film analytical skills that you have, and putting them out there more than, your crazy editing skills. Of course, as you get more familiar with the software, I think it's important to kind of manipulate the audiovisual kind of medium in ways that it would help, kind of, showcasing novel ways about the film, but also kind of, moving your argument and propelling your argument, etc. Yeah, and I just wanted to say that, I think, obviously in the beginning you were saying like your audiovisual essay is going to feel a bit more raw, or because like you might not be, the best editor, but I think coherency could also work in your favor in terms of creating this lucid, scholarly videographic work. And when we talk about the more poetic work, I think, the rawness, the less, the incoherent work would actually do better there in that mode of production. But
Yeah,
but
no.
yeah,
Oh, sorry.
no, yeah, go, and then I'll give some other tips, and then we could round up.
No, I mean, I think you're onto something there, and I also think, this goes back to the advice that is at the heart of the Middlebury approach, which is the make first,
Yeah,
think later, type approach. And I actually think that can. I think sometimes when you're beginning to make a video essay, you aren't confident in it until you start making it, if you understand what I mean.
yeah,
Until you start playing around and figuring out how this will work. Um, so start playing around before you set in stone your argument, and let the film teach you something as you're working on it. Um, there are one thing that as I mentioned, I encountered videographic criticism very early on in my film education, and I felt like at that point, before I had encountered it, I didn't really understand how. And we're talking a lot about film here, but obviously video essays can be about a wide range of
yeah.
mediums, television, video games, really any moving
Music
image
videos, yeah,
object. Yeah. And but for me, I don't think I really understood how a film was constructed, you know how film language works, how, I don't think I really understood that. And I don't think I really did until I started playing around with it and immersing myself in it. So I would say really lean into that. And even if you don't want to be a videographic critic, I think it's worth making a video essay or trying to once in a while, because it will teach you something about the medium that you might not otherwise know. And so I think if you look at making video essays that way, there's a lot to be gained other than, oh, I made this great video essay that everyone loves and enjoys. Like you can make it and have it be a cool thing, but think of it as a way um, to think about your other work more critically. I know, for example, a lot of videographics, a lot of people who went to the Scholarship and Sound and Image workshop, the year that I first went to cover it, it was the year only of graduate students. So I think all people who were working on their PhD, and a lot of people were trying to make a video essay that was related to their dissertation. And I know a lot of people said that the process of making the video essay taught them something new about what they were working on in their dissertation.
yeah.
Right. And so, that is incredibly useful and valuable. So you may also think of videographic criticism as a way to work through other ideas that are essential to your writing.
Yeah,
Um,
it could, yeah, as we
yeah.
pointed out, it could also be a research method, right? And
Right.
it could, yeah, it could also, yeah. I mean, the question is also like, can you have a PhD dissertation that is completely through the audiovisual medium? And I mean, that's something we could talk about later. But
right. And there
let
are
me
people
know.
who are attempting that and have done that. And yeah, I think we're definitely starting to see more of that, which is exciting.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I don't know if you have any more tips, but yeah, I generally think that, as you were saying, people, you should just go for it. I mean, it could be, if you don't know how to edit, like it could be overwhelming at first, but if you have some kind of critical thought about film or any other media object, you could try to express that through the audiovisual medium, and try to figure out, what works for you at the end of the day. And we live in this era of remix, pastiche, postmodernism, where you could essentially bring in anything you want, and share it essentially. Um, And yeah, I just do you have any other tips before I go on to the next point?
I think that's what I got. Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, I just wanted to, ask you as well, like, what are your future projects, and where do you also see this videographic or audiovisual essay career going?
Hmm. Yeah, so I have a couple projects. I mean, one is my Rio Bravo Diary project, in which
Yeah,
you mentioned it, and I've divided or roughly divided the film into 365 equal parts, roughly equal. It's not going to totally, mostly because I suck at math, but also sometimes not things don't divide evenly. Um, and I'm basically tweeting, I'm watching it, in order, linear, um, and basically tweeting out one clip per day and annotating it in no more than the length of a single tweet.
yeah,
That is part of trying to understand my relationship with it. I wrote a long essay about it, about my relationship with the film that you can go read. I have a website now, riobravodiary.com, if people want to look at it. But essentially, I'm thinking about, okay, how could this Twitter feed, I mean, I'm trying to learn more about the film as one. I'm also wondering, how could a Twitter feed be considered videographic criticism in a way? But third, I've made one video that has been a kind of a child of the project,
yeah,
that was informed by an exchange that I had with Johannes Binotto on Twitter, that then informed a video. So how could the Twitter feed also be a site of video graphic? Like, how could it give birth to other videographic projects? Right. So that's kind of my main thing right now. And it's good for me because, I have a full-time job. I'm not a student anymore. And so for me, this is something that I can do every day that doesn't take me, it's watching. I think the clips are usually about 23 seconds long. So I watch the clip, think about it, do it. In 10 minutes, I've done something for the day.
yeah,
So then I'm trying to think through, I started that in November, so last November. So I have a ways to go, but I'm already starting to think about, what does that look like? And how could this feed a larger project? I'd ideally love to write an article about it, but also create some videos and things. So it'll be a whole website. Um, yeah. So that's kind of my main project. I have another video essay that I'm working on, and that's related to Grace Kelly,
yeah,
and stardom. I'm very interested in classical Hollywood, as you can tell, as listeners could tell. Some other ideas. This year for me is the year that I'm really trying to start thinking of myself as an audiovisual essayist and really making a lot of work. So I'm trying to make one video per month. And that could be something like Raging Psycho, which is a few minutes long and is an idea, and then maybe a longer piece. So I've done all right. I think I've made 3 videos thus far this year, so I'm ahead of schedule. And really trying to think through my work. As far as my future in academia, I think I would like to do a PhD. I mean, we'll see what the state of the academy is. I'm working through exactly what I want to do, but I don't think that audiovisual criticism will be the focus of my PhD. I mean, that could change, of course. That's for many reasons. I mean, one is I do have a range of interests and things that I want to do. And I don't necessarily, I like that videographic criticism for me is something that I find so much enjoyment in, and that in many ways is kind of like a hobby, in the sense that I have a full-time job and I do it in my free time. And so I don't know if I necessarily want it to be everything that I'm doing all the time, because I almost wonder if it would take some enjoyment out of it for me. But also because, to your point, it's unclear what the state of it will be in the academy going forward. So but I'm inherently interested in questions of appropriation, of uh, of you know uh, digital culture and
yeah,
in theory and critical theory. And so these questions are all, they inform my work, but I don't think will necessarily be that focus. But maybe they will be. I don't know. But they will always be a part of what I do. And if you were to say, what would my dream be 10 years from now, it would be to be an academic and to have scholarly interests, but among them be teaching courses in videographic criticism. I love the environment at Middlebury for teaching this work and the scholarship and sound and image workshop. And I think that is, for me, like, that is just as important as making for me. Like what I love about the podcast is I love talking about this work. I love sharing it. And that's why I think I occupy kind of an interesting space in the video essay landscape, because I would say that I'm very much in it, but I don't think my number one thing is as a video essayist itself. But like I said, this year is what I'm trying to change that. So we'll see what what happens. But yeah,
Yeah. So
how about you? Yeah.
yeah, I'm currently working on a project about Rammstein. I mean, they're yeah, I really like their work, generally speaking. But yeah, I think I was really interested in trying to figure out why they're so controversial. And I thought that it's actually it's something that I wanted to do for a while now, but haven't really come to it. But I just wanted to get over with it. And yeah, I was also thinking about they have a lot of most of their music videos are pretty vivid and transgressive. But I can't. I would love to like do an proper analysis on each one of them. But this also ties into having a full-time job. And I guess your method is the way to go, right? Watching like 23 seconds or like a minute of a video and then like writing about it. But then again, yeah, I do want to do like justice to like the whole work, obviously. And that's why, yeah, I chose two music videos. Maybe they might change, but yeah, so that also, begs the question, like you can't, you have all these ideas in your head at the end of the day, especially for me. And I write them down, and having a full-time job, I can't come to most of them at the end of the day. I mean, I essentially try to pick out the best ones that I think, would probably, hit more views or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of my future in the field, I think it is, yeah, like it is hard to see yourself kind of working with, as an audiovisual essayist and, doing actual like proper making it monetize, etc., outside of the academic realm. And is there any other option? And as we were talking about, YouTube could be an option. You could get some monetization from there. But then again, reaching that point is very difficult. Having like 500,000 subscribers by already doing such a niche, kind of making already such niche content, I don't know. But yeah, we have seen people done it. People are doing that, and academia is also just you have the ability to teach future generations about videographic criticism, and you could just generally also research into it, and that it gives you that space. It's that space for it essentially. But yeah, like let's see what the future holds. I mean, as we said, in 10 years we'll be looking at this conversation. Like let's see where we'll be.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's at the end, that's the perfect disclaimer, I think, for this entire conversation, is that this, when like I said at the beginning, when we talked about this, doing this conversation, I really liked the idea of just putting it all out there and having saying like, this is where our head's at. We might change our mind a week from now, 2 weeks from now. Some of our concerns might be addressed. But if anyone out there is wondering, what are young or like new budding scholars, video essayists, like, what are we thinking about? What are we wondering? This is it. So if our concerns are completely unfounded and we're worried about something or concerned about something that doesn't need to be worried about, please reach out, because we're all ears. It's this is yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, but what are we're just generally worried about the just the future of it, just a general uncertainty. We don't know where it's going, but we're doing some things in the field that are shaping the field. But yeah, like we don't know where our work is going to bring the field, and etc. So
right.
We just hope for the best, generally speaking. But all we can do is keep on creating, although sometimes it might be difficult, with a full-time job, as we said. But at the end of the day, it's just what we're passionate about.
Yes, exactly. And I think also for me, it's, as you say, we will both work full time, at the end of the day, work on video essays. And for me, like you said, you have a bunch of different projects all in a row, and whichever one, I just go to which one's going to give me the most enjoyment today, which one's going to be the most fun, and that's how I think about it. And that's what motivates me to do it. And I think that is incredibly liberating. And that, I guess that'd be my one piece of advice. And that is, if you're making a video essay and you're not excited by it and you're not enjoying it and you're not having fun doing it, I think you should probably question why you're doing it. And maybe it's not worth it, because I think that is such an important aspect to this work that I think is why I love it, and why, doing the podcast and everything else, never really feels like a chore to me. It never feels like homework. And I felt that way even when making video essays was my actual homework.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just thinking about, what you are interested in within, just general, if it's pop culture, if it's just, experimental art house, and I'm mostly talking to the viewers here, but like just thinking about those things and thinking about, starting from there, I think just coming out from that general, interest and then going on and researching deeper into it. And, who
right.
knows, you might even actually become more interested in the topic. And that's what, I mean, happens to me. It stems from this observation, as we were talking about earlier as well. And then the more I dig deeper into it, the more questions you have, the more you want to, go deeper into it. And
Of
obviously
course.
there's a stopping point, but yeah.
Well, we live in a moving image based society, right? If you're interested in politics, you could be a video essayist, right? If you're
Yeah.
interested in sports, you could be a video essayist, right? Like as long as you're thinking about the, I think those could be included in the form that we are talking about, as long as, to go back to that original thing, it's thinking about media, right? It's not talking about Donald Trump and using clips to illustrate that. It's talking about Donald Trump in relationship to Fox News, One American News Network. It's thinking about Michael Jordan in relationship to how he is shown in commercials and documentary, and then using the form to think about other
Right.
medium itself, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
And
not just enough to do a montage clip, but it could be anything. So
yeah.
I think that's why when we look at the future of this form, that's what's going to be really interesting,
Yeah.
to think about how is a football game, how is a baseball game shown, what are the camera, like how do we see
Right.
those on TV, like that, those are the questions that you need to be asking yourself if we want this form to grow beyond film and
Yeah.
TV and moving image art.
There should be some, critical undertones, of course. And as you
Yeah,
were saying, it should be, it could be about a visual, a video in general, and you could be critical about that. But,
right.
in musicology, they're also doing audio essays, and you could also, just do about the audio and stuff like that. But anyways,
And that's what's good about your term, the audiovisual essay, which is a better term because audio is just as important as sound, is just as important as the image in this type of work. And I know I am guilty of always talking about the image, the image, the image, the image, but sound is just as important.
yeah, the
So
thing about sound, I mean, the voiceover I think is really important, or some sort of like, textual input, is really important in audiovisual essay because it comes back to that academic tradition of using text. And we
right.
could say so much more concrete, kind of an abstract, I don't know, like concepts or whatever you want to say through text as opposed to the audiovisual medium, I think. And yeah, that's why. Yeah, I mean, the video essay is. I think the video essay is more of a, common term, generally accepted. But yeah, let's all use audiovisual essay from now on. Just saying.
Yeah. Audio, I think if I did perfect time, it would be audiovisual criticism.
Yeah, audiovisual
But
criticism. Yeah,
it's so
videographic.
wordy.
Yeah,
It's so wordy. Maybe we should just come up with an entirely new word altogether that doesn't have, just completely make it up out of nowhere. And then it will be free of all these other loaded associations with the essay and
yeah,
criticism and video and anything. But anyway, conversation for another
yeah,
day.
yeah. And we could just call it bananas and apples for all we care, but that's
Yeah.
also fine, right? Anyways, yeah, thanks a lot, Will, for your conversation. I think people could take a lot from this, and yeah, you're just thanks a lot for the great insights, your ambition. It's really appreciated. Um, yeah,
Thank you. And I will say, one of the things, and I really appreciate you doing this and for all the work that you do and for inviting me and everything. And I will say one of the things that, we are just two people who are young practitioners, and there's a ton of really great work out there and a lot of, people who are new to this form who are thinking about it. One of the things I do in my newsletter is I have a student spotlight. I try to each week, which is a conversation with a student audiovisual essayist. And there's so much great work being done. I've mentioned Sydney, who's a collaborator and friend of mine, and
yeah,
so many others. And so I think as we, I would encourage you all to go find the work of students in particular, because I think that's where um, some of the most exciting, innovative work is being done in this form.
yeah.
So there's a final plug to use this conversation to go find the work and thoughts of others as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And Yeah. Do you have like maybe there we could, you know, make some sort of platform where we feature the student works, you know, that would be also pretty interesting for newcomers as well. But we could talk about that later as well. But
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Anyways, thanks a lot, Will. And yeah, I hope everyone listening, or that everyone that will listen, yeah, enjoyed this. And if anyone that will listen has any questions, just yeah, put it in the comments, and I'll put your website down below, your email, my website. So just hit us up about anything and everything. Anyways, as we said, we are just at the beginning of the end, and let's see what the form brings. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Will.
Thank you. Thanks.